All right, we're live. Friends and family over here, TikTok over here, and Instagram over here. Let's see, what are we talking about today? Today we're talking about the E-2 Treaty Trader Visa. The E-2 Treaty Trader Visa. This is probably the biggest visa, the best visa to come into the United States. You've heard of all the other visa categories, the F1 International Student Visa, the H-1B, arguably DACA's parole, but beyond everything, E2 is probably the number one. But it's very hard to get it. Well, I don't want to say hard. One of the main requirements is that you have to be a trading country that's in partnership with the United States. So not all countries can apply, to the point where certain people, they go to a different country to get a citizenship at a different country that is a partner with the US just to get the E2. We're going to talk about that. But that's not the main story that we're going to talk about. So today, the main thing we're talking about, the main story for tonight is the E2 Treaty Trader Visa, but we're doing a change of status. That is actually very unique because 95% or more, maybe even close to 98% of people who are applying for the E2 Treaty Trader Visa, they do it at the consulates overseas. They do not do it in the United States. Why? Because if you do it in the United States, you still ultimately need to go to the consulate to do it again over there if you want to travel. And most people, if you're telling them for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you cannot leave the United States, most people say, no, of course not. I have family back at home. I have businesses abroad. I want to travel for fun. Of course I want to travel abroad. So if you want to travel, you need a visa. If you need a visa, then you need to do it. You need to get the E2 visa at the consulate abroad. So why would somebody do a change of status in the United States and go abroad, right? So that's the big question. But for this client, they needed to do it. And so for certain cases, people need to do a change of status. But because so few people do it, it is very unique. And so that's why this story, we want to kind of share it with everyone, to go through the entire process. And this client, they spent 5 years going through the entire process. So it's extremely long, extremely complicated, but that's what we want to go through. Now, one of the main reasons why we're actually doing the E2 visa is because we want to celebrate the success story in February 2025. So every month, we're going to collect all the different successes and approvals, and we're going to pick one success story that is most interesting that we want to share. So in 2025, we printed out all the approvals here. We have 79 approvals, and there's some that's adjustment of status, 45 applications. There's waiver cases, there's non-immigrant visa petitions, there's family petitions, there's other I-140s. But out of all the February 2025 cases, if I were to pick one, it would be this E2 Treaty Trader Visa, a change of status with USCIS. You'll see why it's crazy, but we'll get to it. Now, before we get into the success story where we actually film it live, I want to talk a little bit about E2 as a news update. This is not something that you'll see anywhere online, generally speaking. Okay, somebody's calling me, but I'm going to cancel that. Generally, you're not going to see anything online about this, but this is just from personal experience. In December 23rd, 2022, right? So a couple years ago, if you think about what was going on December 2022, certain wars were happening. The United States implemented a brand new rule, and haven't seen this in the past 10 years of the practice. It just came out, and essentially it says, if you are applying for an E2 Treaty Trader Visa and you got your citizenship through a third country by investment, you have to live there for 3 years. And the reason they implemented this rule is because a lot of people are not born in the country of a partnering country with the United States. And so in order to get this super powerful visa, that is the best of all visa categories, the E2 visa, they would spend money, they would invest in a different country, and they would get a citizenship at a different country. And then with that citizenship, then they could go to the consulate and apply for this E-2 visa. And the E-2 visa is to create a business in the United States. And so they have a business or they buy a business, and then now they're able to live here. It's almost as good as a lawful permanent resident, right? So some people say it's like a mini green card. That's how good a E-2 visa is. You don't have to pay taxes worldwide. So you only pay taxes on your income and your profits from your business. The business itself doesn't have to be super big. It's just a small, non-marginal business. And you're able to bring your entire family. Your spouse can work any job. So it's way better than H-1B. Your children can go to public school. It's amazing, right? So a lot of people who are not part of the treaty traded country, there's three big countries that you should know of: Russia, China, India. And for the reason, probably, and I'm just speculating here, if the US enters the treaty traded countries with those countries, you know, that's couple million people who would just immediately apply and will just flood the market and it will just kill everything, right? But if you are from other countries, right, that are much smaller, Japan, Singapore, other countries, Israel was one of the newest added to the list, you could just apply for the E-2 and you can start a small business and you could come here, right? So in December of 2022, they implemented this 3-year rule. It's been a couple years now. So I would like to report what we are seeing on the ground, right? When this rule came out, it was very serious because a lot of people have invested heavily to get a citizenship at it. It's not easy just to get a citizenship of another country, right? You still have to make a large amount of investment. You still have to prove you have like resident property. You have to file taxes, etc. Every country has their own requirements, but usually it takes a year or a couple years to make it happen. So this kind of stopped the flow of all third country global migration patterns because the US implemented this rule. What was shocking to me in this past few months in looking at everything is that a lot of people, despite this rule, still got the E-2 visa. So back in December 20, you need to live at that other country for 3 years, or else your E-2 could be denied. But in looking into the rule, I think one of the key things is saying USCIS may request additional documentation related to how the applicant obtained the treaty country's nationality to ensure compliance with the amended language, namely the 3-year rule. So it's very much a discretionary rule by USCIS and the consulate. If they want to deny you, you didn't live there for 3 years, that's a basis for denial. Just like it's a basis to deny your E-2 application if you have immigrant intent. It's always there. You're supposed to have an exit plan. Now, most people who do E-2 visas, they don't really have an exit plan, but they still need to they need to attest that they have an exit plan, right? Why would you spend so much money to create a business, move your family over, and say, oh, in a few years, I'm going to leave after my visa is done? That's not practical. That's not reasonable, but that is the law. And so to fulfill that, you write a statement saying you have an exit plan, you have home ties, and therefore you're going to depart. But and I've seen officers, despite a great business in the US, despite everything, they just deny the applicant saying, sorry, we think you have immigrant intent. We don't think you're going to exit. So therefore your E-2 is denied. Not fair, generally speaking, because nobody else is held to that standard, but they still do that. So it's similar to that aspect. It's an additional reason, an additional way for USCIS and the consulate to deny E-2 applicants. But it is not something that they have been extremely strict on, because I've just seen so many cases who don't fulfill the 3-year residency rule and still applied and still got it. Some people like maybe been there for like a month and they didn't fulfill the 3 years. And maybe because the consulates give a lot of leeway. You know, you got your citizenship right after this rule was implemented. You're not a threat to the US, so we're not going to look into it. I don't know what the rationale is behind the consulate and the USCIS's decision. I'm just reporting from the ground, from what we're seeing. We do a lot of E-2s around the world, and so that is what we're reporting. Okay, so you're not going to see this anywhere else. That is fresh. And that is the news segment of this live session. And now we're going to jump into the story for today. So this father contacted us because his son is about to age out and is not going to be able to stay in the United States any longer. The father, the mother, they are here under E2. The child is about to hit 21, cannot be a dependent with them anymore. So the solution is for the child to get their own E2. So the father contacted us back in November of 2020 to prepare E2 for the child. Okay? Then the father later on got a green card through the EB-5 investment program, but we didn't get the child's E2 approved until February 6th of 2025. It's a 5-year process. Let me walk you through all the little things that happened in this case. It's absolutely insane. We got one of the most difficult and challenging requests for evidence by USCIS because we did a change of status from a student to an E2 status in the United States. And we've done a lot of these, so we're confident in doing it. But this time, this was one of the most difficult requests for evidence. We fought through it, we got it approved, and we want to show you exactly what happened. Let's go. Okay, that was the intro. Now, let's get to it. Hi everyone, my name is Joseph. I'm the managing partner here at Zhang Associates, where we solve legal problems with creative solutions. And the legal problem in this case was that here's a kid, a young kid, first job, actually not even his first job, right? He literally just graduated and he's changing his status to try to get his first job to do an E2 investment. He's a treaty trader investor. They're from Canada, and they, for their personal reasons, they did not want to leave the United States to go to the consulate to get interviewed, to get the visa to come back in. They just want to stay in the United States. They want to do it by all means. And so we filed the change of status. Let me walk you through the timeline, okay? So November 2020, the father contacted us and they formed a pet spa. In December, the father engaged us to prepare the E2 case. The child changed to get an associate degree, but the associate degree ended because something happened with the school. Then they changed to a bachelor's degree and then transferred to a different school, and then the child got the OPT, so started working for the school, and then ended and went back to school. This entire time, the company, this pet spa, kept on trying to get licensed, hire people, and doing interior design and do marketing. Ultimately, we submitted this E2 change of status in September of 2024 with premium processing. 1 month later, we got a request for evidence. In January, responded to the request for evidence. We used the full 3 months, and like 10, 20 days later, the case got approved. But this case was challenged in every single way possible. And the worst part of the whole thing, in my opinion, was that we got the request for evidence right when I was out on paternity leave. So I couldn't look into this case, but we assigned a lot of people to it. Andy was leading the charge, reviewing everything. We prepared over 1,000 pages to respond to this one single request for evidence. This was like 3 to 4 different cases all in one. Responded to it, case got approved. Thank God, right? But let me walk you through how they challenged the case, all right? So I have the request for evidence here. And rarely do you actually see a request for evidence for an E2, because most people, like I said, 95% to 98% of the people, they apply for E2 overseas at the consulate. And when the consulate wants to deny your case, or when the consulate asks for more things, they don't give you an explanation. They just ask, can I get this? That's it. They don't spell their reasons. And if they deny you, they just say you don't qualify, or they check a box. But with USCIS, one of the perks is you actually get this written out statement. So let's see how many pages we got, all right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. It was 9. No. It was total of 10 pages, but last page doesn't count because that's just like a mailing form. So 9 pages of written commentary on why they're going to deny this case. Talk about stress, right? And again, picture the family. Father and mother's been here in the US for like decades, finally got their green card. Child aged out 5 years ago, couldn't be with them. So they have to change their status. have personal reasons. They cannot leave the country. So they did a change of status. Everything is riding on this one request for evidence. They spent 5 years preparing for it. And this is what they get. So first, they challenged the general requirements for the E-2. They challenge the source of fund for the E-2. They challenge the investment amount. They challenge whether or not this is a new business investment. They challenged whether or not this is a bona fide enterprise. And they challenged the non-immigrant status. Now, again, this kid went from student to OPT to student. The student is the owner of this business, but this business has been operating while the student was a student, so cannot technically work. So did they violate their non-immigrant status, right? And so in every way possible, it was a super hard case. If you were just to look at the response that we prepared, right? So let's look at the response. How many pages did Andy prepare in 3 months? 6 pages. 6 pages. Seems so easy. It took 3 months of sleepless nights for the entire team to put this together. And I was reading through it and I was reviewing it with them. Just so impressed with the strategy and the way everything was put together. In looking through the actual supporting documents, there was these 2 other detailed explanations, right? So the source of fund was another 4 pages. We borrowed the way EB5 investors to get green cards. We borrowed the source of fund strategy that deals with those type of cases. We put it here. That was a separate source of fund document, 4 or 5 pages. Promissory note. And that was another, I don't know. That was another like 3-4 pages for multiple source of funds because, again, as a student running this pet spa, couldn't really expand the business as a student, and they were limited in their capacity to earn money. So the father and the mother kept on pouring in more and more money. Do you know how much they invested in this pet spa business? $400,000, or actually more, $402,000. I mean, that's pretty much an EB5, right? A couple years ago, if you invest $500,000, you could get a green card. In this case, the kid invested $400,000. I mean, not obviously the kid's money. He borrowed it all from the parents, but invested $400,000 to run a pet spa to try to make it work. It is absolutely incredible the length parents go for their kids just so that they can get a status to live in the United States. Think about how crazy that is, right? And so that's what the parent did. And you might think, oh, that's a lot of money. That's hard. It was even harder to prove source of fund because, you don't really want to just say you gifted the kid $400,000. That might not qualify. We had to do the source of fund from the parent to the child, the promissory notes, the loan agreements, where the parents got the $400,000. The parents already spent more than $500,000 to get an EB5 green card. And they did a source of fund for all of that. Now they have to go through this entire process to do source of fund for this additional $400,000. It's absolutely insane, but that's what it required, right? Luckily, E-2 requirements do not require the same amount of scrutiny as an EB5 investment. That's 2 different standards, but still, the requirements are there, and you're not gonna feel comfortable if you just do a cheap job at it. So you still go all out. One of the things that I was extremely impressed by was the most difficult was how Andy's team dealt with the non-immigrant status issue, right? A lot of people here are on F1 student visas or on other statuses that you're not technically supposed to work. You're not technically supposed to earn an income. So how can this kid own a company that is doing all this work, right? So there's USCIS is saying you potentially violated your status. Please prove to me you did not violate your status. And what's the explanation? Well, the way we explained it was that he was the owner, investor. There were employees at the company. The father was very much involved in the company, helping build the company. And a lot of the process was getting permits, was remodeling. So it was an active. And so the student was, the period in which the student was on OPT, they did everything there. And then afterwards, when they went back to school, they were not working. They were just as an investor. We documented everything, explained everything, and and of course we warned them during this time that this was a complication. Prepared everything, and submitted it, and the case was approved. Right. Let me kind of walk you through the exhibits. Oh, we got a question. So.
Okay, yeah, we have. I want to apply for citizenship, but I have a shoplifting misdemeanor charge 23 years ago.
Okay.
Should I be nervous?
You should definitely get a certified court disposition on that case. You should show that everything was complete, paid for, and done. You should show that you've been completely reformed as an individual, so you are a good person, you're paying taxes, etc. That was a small mistake long time ago. Should you be nervous? You should be prepared, right? So that thing happened, it's gonna come up, they're gonna question you about it. So if you're not prepared, then you might answer wrongly and the case might be in jeopardy. So definitely be prepared and be able to explain. Will they deny your case? Will they challenge your case? That's out of your control, right? But as long as you can show that you meet the requirements and be confident about it and explain, I mean, it happened 23 years ago. A lot of USCIS's decision after 10 years ago, they kind of minimize it, right? So if everything else in the past 10 years show that you are contributing to the US, you're great, you're paying taxes, you're a person that they want to be part of the Commonwealth, more likely than not, they will want to approve it. But it's a matter of good moral character kind of assessment, right? So let me go through kind of the exhibits, right? So number one, source of fund. Here's everything that we had to document. The client initially only invested around 300,000, but over the year, in the past 5 years, they upped it to 500,000. So we had a detailed statement, notarized, and showing all the sources and each transfer, right? Each wire transfer from the parent to the son, from the son to the company, the loan statement, the promissory note, everything was valid, and the loan repayment schedule, right? It cannot just be, here's a promissory note, 0% interest. That looks fake, right? And where did the father get that money? So again, we documented all of that. That was 9 exhibits. Then the actual investment, what was it used for? And that it's a bona fide business. We went from Exhibit 10 to Exhibit 37 talking about everything that this pet spa did. Man, running a pet spa is hard work. They have to partner with a school to get really good technicians. They have to market, they have to get clientele, and they have to get high-end clientele that can afford the pet washes, and they have to get like a truck, they have to get mobile clinics, they have to do a good remodel so it looks good, they have to have good customer service just to try to make a little bit of money. It's such a difficult business, but they love pets and they wanted to do it, and they know clients who want to do it. And a lot of times when you want to, wash your pet, you do it at home, or you have to drive really far and you have to make an appointment and you get dirty and it's uncomfortable. But if these pet spas can be directly accessible at your front door, personalized for you with a good customer service, certain people will pay. But how many of them can you find? And how many of them can you squeeze within a certain day so one technician can service all of them, right? That's the logistic nightmare that they have to have. And they have to get the city permit. So that was also very difficult. So there's all these things that the parents had to help the child to create. Why a pet spa? Part of it was when we started this case back in 2020, I remember very distinctly talking to the parents, like, you don't want to just run any business. This is your child's business. Focus on something that the child enjoys and likes and can talk about and can be invested in, and that they can do, because they are the investors, right? USCIS might directly challenge them later on if they go to the consulate. They need to be able to articulate the business plan and the thoughts and the hobby that they have. So I think we spent a good couple months just even thinking about what are all the different possibilities. We even thought about Pokemon cards, the store, all sorts of things. Ultimately, we landed on this pet spa because they themselves like pets. And so, again, Exhibit 10 to Exhibit 37, employee records, employee resumes, previous utility bills, credit card statements of everything they purchased in the past 5 years. It was very, very substantive to prove that this is an operating business, making money, providing services. And so, again, that wasn't a hard part, but definitely still took a lot of work. The non-immigrant status part was probably the most difficult thing because we had to explain why did they go from an associate degree to a bachelor's degree, changing different schools, leaving the country, getting a visa, coming back in, having OPT, and then going back to school and then changing the status, right? Like this whole explanation of whether or not they violated status was quite difficult, but they were able to do it. And we have the business plan here as well. And so I want to share a little bit about from this. So the client actually engaged us to do business plans. Now, I just want to state, right now, we're generally trying to encourage all clients to do their own business plans with the power of Canva and AI. There's so much that you can do already. We give you samples, but there are some clients that just like, you know what, you guys do a much better business plan than we do. We just don't have the time, so please do it. So we spent 5 years building out this business plan. So, we know how to run a pet mall really well now, right? We have key industry stats. We have pet ownership, household income. Generally speaking, you'll be surprised, but dog owners are usually not as wealthy as cat owners. You would think it might be the other way around, but generally there's like a correlation with that. A lot of pet foods are very, very lucrative, and it comes from all over the world. It's not FDA regulated as much as human food for obvious reasons, but people, when they're buying food, they're thinking food in the same price range as human food. It's like, oh, I buy a meal for $15, I'll buy my pet a meal for $15, right? So it's extremely lucrative. Scam likely is calling again. Where to get and find really passionate technicians from all these different schools and then hiring them to service, that was probably the biggest bottleneck for this business, but they were able to find it and do it, and the projection and revenue reaching $1 million within a few years. So these were some of the key facts that we found about this case. Would I recommend it? I think after doing this business plan, seeing how everything is done, it is definitely a passion project, right? You are literally trading your time to wash pets, and you have to hire technicians. There's definitely like we did another E-2 business plan for using water pressure to wash houses and cars and cleaning cars and detailing. That arguably is far more lucrative as far as numbers wise than pets. Everybody has multiple cars. All the cars needs to be washed, and houses at the same time. So you do one trip, you could potentially do 3 or 4, cleans and services. Whereas a pet, how many people have like 5 pets that all need to wash at the same time? And if you go one place, is your neighbor gonna need it? So definitely it's a passion project. It is very difficult to make a lot of money. It took, again, $400,000 of investment to try to make this work. Ultimately, case got approved, so we're very, very thankful. But still, it was not easy. And that's it for this success story. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you. Bye-bye. So that was the success story. Now we're going to take questions.
Yeah, so anyone feel free to ask questions. Could be related to E-2, could be related to anything else. And while we're waiting for the questions to file in, we can do some YouTube questions.
Okay.
I remember the media team helped design that business plan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you remember
my
which?
intern.
Your intern did
Alex,
it?
yeah.
Wow.
He designed the business plan.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it. Love it. Yeah, the client loved it. Yeah, this was one of those cases where the story was so sympathetic. The father wanted to be with the son. The family wanted to be together. They aged out. They couldn't leave the country. The child needed to be here. The father was doing everything they can to make it work for the child. And so we wanted to help them as much as possible. So most cases that we do, maybe 3 months, 6 months to prepare a case and file, right? This E2 took 5 years. We've never done an E2 that took 5 years, ever, right? This was the only case that we've ever done, and it just got approved, in February. And so the media team was involved, the EB5 team was involved, so many teams were involved, but we really wanted to see it succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so one question from YouTube. I have my PERM submitted on January 1st, 2024. It's already been 13 months. How long does it take to get an update? I just keep seeing PERM as an analyst review.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's just how slow they are. And they are updating the system, so potentially could be slower. But right now we're seeing 13 months, 18 months in that range. It's possible. Some miracle cases are getting approved a little bit faster, but what you want to make sure of is you want to prepare all your documents and have it ready just in case the Department of Labor issues you an audit. Because if that happens, you have 30 days to respond very quickly, right? So you're like waiting and waiting and waiting, but at a moment's notice, everything kicks into high gear because you have to prepare for that audit. So that's just my warning. Don't be too relaxed in thinking, okay, this is going to go on forever, and then you're not ready. So when the audit comes, it fails, and then your case gets denied, and you have to restart the whole thing. That's another 2-3 years. Your priority date starts anew, right? So that's like the worst case scenario.
More questions from YouTube.
Yeah.
Do primary school teachers from Pakistan qualify for EB2 NIW?
All countries qualify. If you're in a country that's on a ban list, then you might qualify, get it, but ultimately consulate USCIS denies you still because of other reasons, right? So you could always prove that you are really important to the U.S., that you have a good plan that is of national interest and you deserve it to be waived, and you're well positioned to execute that plan. You could file the I-140, you can file the NIW arguments, and everything could get approved. But ultimately, when you go to consulate, it could be denied, right? And so there's no bar for EB2 NIW, regardless of which country you're from. Now, usually when I'm saying this, it's like if you are from a country that's a little bit more sensitive and the United States might scrutinize the case a little harder, go for the best categories, right? So it's one thing if you're trying to get a tourist visa, right? That's easy to deny. Then you can try to get the F1 visa. That's also relatively easy to deny. But then when you start moving up to H1B, to L1, to O1, to EB2 and IW, to EB1A, a lot of those look a lot better. And it's harder and harder for the consulate to deny because you already went through all this process. USCIS already approved it. And so unless there's like a major stain on your record, generally they will still approve it, in my experience.
And EB2 NIW for primary school teachers?
Yeah, well, I mean, that might be a field, but you want to be able to articulate and argue why what you're going to do is so important to the U.S. on a national level that you deserve to skip the line and to directly go into the adjudication without going through PERM, without going through hiring, right? And so any field can do it, but you have to furnish the argument. Now, that's quite hard, but you might be an elementary school teacher, but maybe you have some super unique insight that nobody else knows how to deal with, that you know how to deal with, and that you can solve it, and then the entire United States needs to listen to you because you're the expert in that field, right? Totally possible, right? Let us know, right? Let USCIS know. But if you're just, again, a normal school teacher and you can't make that argument, then that's probably not the right category.
Other EB2, they submitted EB2, okay, this is more about the process. Submitted their EB2 NIW petition. Payment has been deducted, but no, on 14th of February,
Okay.
2025, but no receipt number and no notice.
So, pro tip, check the back of your check. So when you log on to your bank account, when you see that, oh, my funds have been deducted, I presume you paid by check, right? Look at the back of the check. On the back of the check, there will be a number, and that's actually your receipt number. So that and the receipt, usually it's the same number. So that's how usually we get that receipt number. And then once you get that receipt number, you can go on USCIS website, log in, and you can find out your case status. So that's like a super pro tip that most people don't know about.
Question from TikTok. My green card was mailed to me, but I didn't receive it. I filed in I-90 from 2023 and didn't get back a reply.
You can call USCIS and check the status and try to get them to reissue it again. Unfortunately, that happens a lot. Mailing problems, USCIS problems. But if it doesn't work, maybe ultimately you have to just do another I-90. But I know that's extremely frustrating, right? You're supposed to get your green card. It didn't get to you. You already filed an I-90. You did the right thing, but it didn't get mailed to you again. But find out why, right? Are you living in a place that has like a complicated address number? That totally might be an issue. And if it is, maybe you want to change addresses and have it mailed there, right? Because, you know, maybe it's like the same number, but different street names, but you're living in the same complex. That happens all the time. And so, you know, USCIS is mailing things all the time. So it's maybe the carrier that's a problem. So yeah, those are things that you could try to do.
6 months after, this is for 751 waivers.
Okay.
Married, bona fide, 6 months after they arrived, lots of conflicts, U.S. citizen filed for divorce, and she filed an order of protection against me. Very little shared documents except communication records and some police reports. Can I still remove the conditions? File 751 waiver, as divorce was never my fault or my choice.
Divorce was never my fault or my choice is not the most important thing for an officer to review this application. The most important thing is, as you know, whether or not the marriage is real. So it could be your fault and it could be real and you can still get your green card, right? So the focus is not, it's not my fault. The focus should be, it's real, regardless of whose fault. Now, it's real, something happened, misunderstanding, irreconcilable differences, divorces happened, police records show it, and then we separated. That's okay. Conflict usually proves something was real, right? Pain is proof that you once lived, right? Being heartbroken proves that you were once in love. So look into that aspect of your relationship and the hardships. Try to extrapolate the powerful testimonials and the stories behind it. Gather friends, gather family, gather online documents, and show the officer. Ultimately, it's up to the officers to make that ultimate discretion, but it's up to you to prepare the best case possible. Have we seen cases that are married for less than 6 months get approved on a 751 waiver? Absolutely. So do your best and document your story. It's not about what you see online, because online, you know, whether you have kids, whether you have joint bank accounts, but not every marriage and relationship is like that. You guys live in a very unique time and world in this generation. So it's ultimately up to you to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you did not enter this marriage for fraud to try to get a green card. You tried it out, it just didn't work, but you still deserve a green card and you're going to make the U.S. great, right? That's the story you want to lean into.
Yeah, we have a question from Red.
Okay.
Does my business have to hire U.S. employees for the E-2 visa?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is no. We have seen cases get approved, no employees, high salary, high profit, high taxes, and it gets approved. So unlike the EB-5 program, where the entire goal of the investment green card program is for you to hire 10 U.S. workers, the E-2 program it doesn't have that built into the law. You're not required to hire U.S. workers. However, because of the executive order on buying from America and hiring Americans, if you create an E-2 business and you don't hire Americans and you are actually displacing Americans in a sense of you're a competitor, then by issuing you and your family this visa, it might be harming U.S. workers. So it might be construed in that light and the executive order causes you to be denied. So everything under the E-2 law and category and requirements does not in itself require you to hire U.S. workers. And have we seen cases get approved without hiring U.S. workers? Of course. You prove that your business is thriving, you're paying a lot of taxes, in income tax and profits, and so you're stimulating the economy, you're causing a lot of activity. That fulfills the E-2 requirement. But if somehow your business is causing other U.S. workers not to be hired because you're doing such a good job, that might be looked on poorly. With that being said, if you do 1099s to U.S. workers, it doesn't have to be full-time employees, right? It could be 1099, part-time workers. If you are hiring other U.S. companies to do the work, right? You're not just outsourcing it to overseas, right? Like let's say you're a software company and you're doing amazing work, you're making a lot of money, but suddenly you're outsourcing all the activity to India. Well, that doesn't look good. But if you're outsourcing all the activity to, the Bay Area, and there are all these other software engineers who are doing it as a part-time gig, you're still hiring Americans, right? So hopefully that helps.
That's a tricky one.
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
I was issued a visitor visa without revoking my expired green card. And intending to visit the United States this year, is that going to be an issue?
Wait, say that again?
They have a visitor visa, but they didn't abandon or revoke their expired green card. And they want to visit on, I guess, the visitor visa.
Okay.
Is that going to be a problem?
Congrats. That's awesome. We have seen it happen before, and it's usually by consulate. Different countries and different consulates have different policies. So I know a lot of consulates that require you to abandon the green card first, but there are other consulates that we know of that just directly issue you B1, B2 visa. So great. When you come into the country, you have to make sure you're showing your tourist visa and you're entering as a tourist. If you don't show the right document and they're looking in the system, they might inadvertently admit you in as a green card holder and cause other problems in your life, right? Most people, they're praying to be allowed entry as a lawful permanent resident. But for some people, that might be a nightmare. So you can have multiple different statuses, green card, F1 visa, B1 visa. You can have all the visas in the world, but you can only enter the United States and actualize one form of status and document. So because you have two, make sure when you enter on the one that you want to enter in.
Okay, a simpler one this time. I want to apply for SB1 visa.
Okay.
It's been 2 years and 6 months. Can I do this?
The answer is yes, you can. The follow-up question is what our success rate? It's probably very thin, right? SB1s are really difficult to get. Certain consulates in the world are a little bit more lenient. We have seen some Hong Kong consulates approve a little bit more leniently compared to other places, but generally anything even close to 1 year out of the country, it's quite hard. But so yeah, the answer is you can always apply. We've seen somebody apply 3 different times at 3 different consulates. You keep on applying. And getting a denial does not mean you abandon your green card. It just means they're not approving you. That's all.
My H-1B visa is getting expired September 2025, but I never traveled to the United States. If another company is ready to do an amendment, what is this process like? And I only have 6 months. Is it possible?
Yes. So you want to find another company, file the I-129, get that approved, take that approval, and take the visa. And you can, in some cases, I've seen directly buy a plane ticket, fly to the U.S. because you already have your H-1B visa, right? So you have H-1B visa, you have the new approval, you show the CBP officer, the customs officer, this is my new company that sponsored me, and I want to use my visa to get in to do this work.
We have a question from Red.
Okay.
Like, if I sell my E-2 business, do I lose my visa status right away? And can I reinvest in another business to maintain my E-2 visa?
Great question. There's actually a nuance to that. You don't just own a business, you own a company. You got your E-2 visa via your investment in your ownership of that company. Under this one company, you can have many businesses. Think, Apple, the company, but they sell many different products. They have service, they have iWatch, they have iPad, they have a lot of different things. So a corporation is what enabled you to get the E2 business. You are majority owner of that business, and that's why you're able to get the visa. If you sold the company, you sold the shares in the company, then you've lost the basis in which you got your E2 visa. But if you're just selling the business of this corporation, the money that you earned from the sale, you can always buy a different business and you can keep your E2 visa, right? So the corporation is something that you don't want to sell. The business is what you want to sell. And generally speaking, when buyers are thinking about it, most of the time they don't want to buy your corporation. They already have a corporation. They just want to buy the business. They want you to transfer the assets. They want to transfer the brand. They want to transfer the customers and the employees. They want to transfer the lease agreements. They don't want your blank, blank, blank LLC membership. They don't care about that.
Is it, this is a comment on re-entering after living abroad. Is it even legal when a spouse marries you, then leaves the country for 2 years, then comes back, does the green card procedures, and then abandons you several months later after getting it?
Okay. Let me get this straight. A foreigner and you get married and they get a conditional green card, 2 years, and then they leave the country, abandons you for 2 years, comes back, files the 751 jointly with you, gets the permanent green card, abandons you again, and leaves you. And you're asking, is it legal? I think the question is, how could this possibly happen? Because for the USCIS officer, what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to adjudicate your case and see if your marriage is real. So the better question is, how did you prepare the case with this other person so that you can prove beyond not beyond, but prove that despite living in separate cities and countries for 2 years and so on, and yet your marriage is real and you deserve a green card. I don't want to say it's impossible, but that's a very challenging argument. But let's say you were able to do it and you're able to convince the officer, well, then of course it's legal because you want it. But the question is how, right?
Right. So it would be a really hard argument to make.
Right.
Because it doesn't sound like the marriage is both.
It doesn't. Yeah. Just living in two different cities that's 50 miles apart, it's already a red flag to be suspected for fraud investigation, let alone two different countries. Now, we have done cases that are like that, where one party abandons the other party, but we're filing for divorce. We're proving that this marriage was real, but something happened in the relationship and one party abandoned the other party. But it's not the same as what you're saying, where like you're living together, this marriage is real, they just live separately and then they come back, right? Is it technically possible? Philosophically, you can make some sort of argument, maybe, but I'm just saying it's really hard.
Their green card expired during removal proceedings that got dismissed.
Okay. And then is there a question?
I think the question gets cut off.
Oh, okay. All right, well, we could start with that premise.
Mm-hmm.
The green card expired during removal proceedings, and then removal proceedings got dismissed. So basically, removal proceedings never continued, proceeded, it got closed, and you just basically go back to having an expired green card, which means you could just file an I-90 replacement of green card, and you get your 10-year green card back. Voila!
Okay. Let's see if there's any further complications.
Yeah.
And I know you have a consultation. Oh, can my green card be renewed?
Yes. Now, the I-90 officer who's renewing your green card will be double checking to make sure that it is okay. You don't have the criminal records. There's a reason why you were in deportation proceedings, right? But if it got dismissed and it's not a major problem, it should be fine, and the green card should be able to be issued.
Okay, and I know you have that consultation at 1 in
Yes.
10 minutes. So, any last questions? Everyone feel free to ask.
Let me see if there's anything here. Cool. Nope.
Another one from YouTube.
Yeah.
Got my RFE notice today. This is on Bonafide Marriage,
Okay.
I-130. Got an RFE for on the I-130, and they're asking for 10 proofs,
Okay.
but we don't own any joint properties.
Okay.
What should I do then? Is an explanation letter enough?
Most likely not. Because again, if you're the officer and you think 10 cases, 9 of them are fake, and you're just providing a letter saying your marriage is real, do they really believe you, right? So they want 10 documents, you don't have 10. Try to explain why you don't have each one of them, and then give 10 other things that you do have that they didn't ask for that, that's cool, right? So for example, let's just hypothetically say both of you are really into anime and you guys cosplay a lot and you guys have a lot of documents to prove you guys are taking pictures together, you guys are going to conventions together, you guys are doing these things together. It's not joint documents in the sense of like a financial document at a bank or with insurance, but it took 50 hours to make each one of those costumes, and you guys have it, you guys going to all these places and you guys documenting that, and it's really cool, and you guys are on like Crunchyroll and stuff. That's, I would say, a pretty strong document, right? At least proving you guys are in a good friendship, right?
How much does it cost to process advance parole?
Great question. The government fee, I think it's around $600-700. I think, I don't know off the top of my head. Our fee completely ranges depending on what you need from us. We try to help as many people as we can. So definitely, we just do a $250 consultation. We'll walk you through the whole thing, teach you how to do it, and go ahead and do it. Again, doing the application is not the most difficult part. It's when you come back and people are concerned, and when you're seeing the CBP officer and how you explain, and if you need to stand by, that is the most expensive part because you're blocking out a whole bunch of time from us. But again, we don't require everyone to do that, right? So depending on your situation, it could be solved as easily as $250 consultation.
Can you join your spouse in the U.S. even if you have a criminal case in your country for using a fake driver's license?
I'm assuming what you're asking is, if you have that on your record, is it possible to still get a visa? And the answer is, it really depends on the consular officer who's looking into that and asking you about it, because it might prove that you are a liability and so they won't approve it, right? But let's say you already have an immigrant visa and you already deserve to get a green card and you got a waiver already, then probably you can come, right?
I have TPS and an MBA from Nepal. What are my options? Is there a chance of NIW?
Yes to the NIW question. TPS is not something we typically deal with, but totally possible. You could be really outstanding. You have a really good plan. You have a good venture capital. You have angel investors who are trying to create something that is really going to be disruptive and is really important. If you can come up with that kind of a business plan, you have your professors that are backing you, you have angel investors, you have good founders, you have good partners, you have I don't want to say a Kickstarter because that's too low, but you have a work in progress, you have a proof of concept, that is totally ripe to make an NIW argument.
They said just option the business as well as MBA.
Huh? Just open the business?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but again, if you have no proof of concept, you have no employees, you have no partners, you have no funding, if just purely you open a business, that's probably not good enough for an NIW.
Oh, we already have business, mails, and ships, which is more into green shipping, like eco shipping.
Okay, great. The thing is, you really want to argue that your business is so important that it needs you to be able to cut in line. You're well positioned to fund it, which you are because you already have the business, right? So the main question now is, does the U.S. need it, right? Does the U.S. greatly need it? Is it something that is as an industry wide? That is something that people are really looking into. Very few people do. Very few people know how to do. But somehow you're able to do it, and the explanation as to why and how it benefits the U.S. and how you're hiring a lot of people. NIW actually focuses a lot on the potential to hire U.S. workers. So the more U.S. workers that your business plan is able to show that you can hire, the better.
And our last question, can I bring in my siblings to the U.S. with a green card?
Your siblings?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, sorry, no. Get a citizenship first and then bring siblings.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you everyone for your questions. Sorry we can't answer everything.
But we try to do this every Thursday, right? So every Thursday from 12 to 1, we're here. We're going to do a success story live, and then we'll release a success story later on. And we will also release most of this live footage. So this entire hour-long footage, we'll probably release it. And so if you have any questions that we couldn't get to, go ahead and just send it to us. And then if you couldn't be available next Thursday, we could still answer your questions. And you just watch this live recording afterwards, yeah? Okay, cool. Thank you.
If people want to talk with you more, book an hour, how can they do so?
Yes, you can contact us on our website. You can book a consultation with so many of the managers here. You don't have to just book with me. They're all better than me in every way on their expertise, right? And so you could definitely contact us that way. If you really only want to speak with me, go ahead and email us. It's on our website as well, and then we can coordinate a time.
And yes, our consultation fee is $250.
Yes.
As well. I just want to announce.
Just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Take care.
We will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.